Hi everyone. We're here today with Nayeh. I'm Helena Bajaj Larsen, and I'm a textile designer based between Paris and India. And because you want to introduce yourself, is it working?
Hi everyone, my name is Nayeh and I'm a designer
Designer,
and it is
and it is
where
where?
is there
Is there? I can hear you.
can you hear
Can
me?
you hear me? Yeah. Do you want to go ahead? I don't know.
Yes, so we
So,
can
yeah, I think it's working.
working.
Working. Oh.
So
Yeah,
you're
so we wanted to start by discussing our experiences at Parsons School of Design, since it's the institution that we both attended, but quite a few years apart. So I guess if you want to start with talking about how it was when you were there, which year was it? I
I started
started
2002.
2002.
I graduated 2006 or 7, 6 or 7.
Hey guys, sorry we had some technical difficulties, but we're back. So I guess what we were starting to talk about was the fact that we both attended Parsons School of Design in New York City, quite a few years apart, and we wanted to actually discuss our experiences with Parsons fashion curriculum, how it's changed over time, and also how that actually ended up influencing our career paths and how we approached our creative journeys. So I guess Nayeh, if you want to start by explaining your time at Parsons, how it was, and then what you've been up to since. Yeah.
So I started in 2002 from Parsons Paris, 2 years, then I transferred to Parsons New York and graduated '06. And we're very driven to getting a job. Like the enter the job circuit was one of the biggest thing when we are at school. So not many people actually thought about opening their own brand. We are really eager to get a job and get a like portfolio done year before and do a lot of interviews. So most of my friends who went to school with me basically still working for a company or start like launching their brand like year ago, like same time as me. Yeah, and we never learned Glow. Obviously, it wasn't exist. We learned like Euphoria, Photoshop, Illustrator. So it was pretty interesting when I talked to Helena that everyone's like actually trying to open their brand. And Last week, actually, I was trying to find a designer. We were like hiring a designer, and I got a lot of application from Parsons. And they told me they tried to launch their own brand for a couple years, and they decided to come back to work. So I noticed the big difference when I went to school and when Honala went to school, and we were like totally trained to get a job, and professor like teach us like write down all the like 5 top lists that you want to work for. So we made all different portfolio for each company that we really want to get a job at, and yeah, so basically.
Yeah, that's definitely very, very different to the experience that I had. I think even in terms of when we had a chat, our curriculums were so different in terms of like their curriculum when Nayeh was at Parsons seemed to have been a lot more technical focused, and it was much more about learning hard skills that will get you into that job and industry that you want to pursue. But it was less about creative thinking. Whereas when I was at Parsons, it was kind of like they had totally dismantled the old curriculum. In fact, we were in a different building altogether. I was there from 2013 to 2017. And even in my time at Parsons, in those 4 years, the curriculum actually changed every year for the next batch of freshmen. And so for us, the focus was so much on creative research, creative thinking, finding design solutions, and like tackling like political and societal problems with fashion. It was totally different, I think, energy altogether. And we were actually really told to kind of try to think outside of the box and not go for that assistant designer job at Philip Lim or Derek Lam or which was kind of the go-to Seventh Avenue thing that you do when you go to Parsons in New York. But for us, it was very much like, how can you think of a totally different way of approaching fashion? How can fashion respond to something bigger than fashion? And I think what ended up happening with that is yeah, a lot of us ended up graduating with this feeling that we can do anything. And like a lot of people were like, okay, let's take the leap and start a brand. And then, like you said, probably after a couple of years, a lot of us also get disillusioned at times. And you're like, okay, well, we were told we can do anything and maybe we can, but sometimes it's also good to be a little bit more measured. So I think probably something in between the two experiences we had would be the best experience where, it's like you're not completely out of contact with reality, but you're also able to be a creative thinker and not just a robot in the design industry. So yeah, we had different experiences in that respect. But I don't know if you want to say anything else about that, Nay.
No, I mean, as we talked about, like I kind of wish I went to school in your time. And so you launched your brand right away after you graduated from Parsons, right? Did you always want to launch your, or did you attending a school?
So, well, I guess I've watched my mother is a well-known painter from India, and so I've kind of had this example in my household from like since I was a kid of a creative person working for themselves and working on their own and I guess doing well whilst doing that. So I guess for myself, I always had this idea that it was very much a possibility to do your own thing. It didn't seem like a crazy idea because I grew up with it. I saw it around me. It was not that big a leap in my head. It seemed like a natural sort of conclusion to doing a graduate collection. It's like, all right, let's turn that collection into something. That being said, I think I was very open to working for a year out of college. So I had done all my visa paperwork to stay in New York. And the summer after I graduated from Parsons, I spent the summer working for Donna Karen for her company called Urban Zen. And we were developing products in Haiti with local artisans for her stores in New York and in LA. And I think that year they didn't hire anyone, but I was very much ready to actually work there for a year or two had they been hired at the time. So I was open to the idea, but only because I really loved what they were doing. I felt it was in line with my aesthetic, and I loved going back and forth to Haiti. So I think I was kind of like okay with doing a job, but only if I really, really love it. And then I didn't see any openings that I really felt so strongly about. And then I thought, okay, why not? And with my senior thesis, a lot of my professors and several people spoke to at Parsons, the dean, for example, and others, and through competitions and panels, I got the feedback that like, okay, Helena, this is something quite different. We haven't really seen it on the market. So why don't you give it a try? And so I think that that positive feedback also helped me have a little bit of the confidence to say like, okay, let's try. And then of course, I mean, I can't discount the fact that it's a privilege to be able to sort of jump into this financially risky ocean of starting your own brand. So I'm very fortunate, and touch wood, it's been going well, but it's obviously still in its initial beginnings, and it's hard. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. But what about you? So what did you do after you graduated, Parsons?
So after I graduated, I mean, I got a job before I graduated, and I worked in New York for I think like 8 years. So like nonstop working until I mean, I'm still working. I'm still working for a company and doing my own line. So I'm, still creative director for one of the brand I'm working at, and also founder of Nayeh. So I think it's kind of like I'm trained to be work for company. So yeah, I just start working and it just kind of happened naturally, launching my brand.
And what was the moment where you were like, okay, I want to launch my brand now after so many years of working for other people? What made you feel like this is the moment now to do so?
I mean, I talked about in my solo session, I had a like big like health struggle, and I was like really really sick, and I had to be on the medication because of the fabrics allergy and the braiding allergy, and I needed something that I can kind of have my own schedule flexibly. So that was the one of the reason launching my own business, and also using sustainable product will be easier for me to work with. And I had to actually talk with my doctor which product that I could work with. So that was the reason that I chose outerwear with the like polyester and all like recycled insulation, because it caused like a least allergy to me. And actually my doctor always told me to like, do you consider change your career, because you're never meant to study fashion, because all the allergy that you had it for a long time, which has been just I've been exposed to it for a long time and totally like went to trigger point. So yeah, that's a reason, because I never really thought about opening my own brand or running a business. It was really difficult, but I was really happy working for company also, getting promoted, learning different stuff, launching a new brand, learning all like different aspects. But I think it was about the time that I had to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like at least you had the experience for a long time. You learned. I mean, I think that's one of my. I guess there's pros and cons to both cases. We're in complete opposite cases, basically, where my only experience working was literally that one summer and previous internships, I think, in college, which doesn't really count. And so sometimes it's true, like it's really nice to be in a company setting where you just like know if I work hard, I will get promoted, and I just kind of know what my role is here. And there's definitely days where I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, someone please tell me what to do. Because when you're running your own thing, you're constantly managing everything, and you have to be generating ideas, generating concepts, doing damage control constantly. And I guess there's something nice about learning and making mistakes in another setting rather than your own before. But I mean, I have no regrets. It's been very exciting, but we'll see. I definitely see the pros of also working for someone. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely there's a pros and cons, because like I feel like it's a really lonely business when you start working for yourself. You don't know like if you're making a right decision, because you can't really talk to anybody. So I'm like keep looking at it, even though I worked for such a long years, and still like, am I doing it right? I'm like speaking to myself all the time. So it is such a lonely business sometimes. So it's really good to meet people, to get connected with the Helsinki Fashion Week. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's such a lonely. I think that's also one of the things that really hit me. Is like you're in school, you're with a bunch of people throughout your life, and then you leave and you don't have that same experience that other people have with like colleagues and stuff. It's very much just you, and it's so important to have someone that you can kind of talk to. Do you have anyone that you can like sort of like bounce ideas off of, or is it really just in your head?
It was just like really in my head, and I was just working on my own for a long time. Yeah. just like I was like speaking to myself.
Yeah.
And also, like, I have two very good friends from Parsons who just opened their brand like a couple years ago, but they're in also like different like segment, like children's wear, athleisure wear. So we're like all different parts that you can't really, talk about design, in terms of design, just the business aspect.
I guess you can still share like what it's like to be in a
Right.
position that you're launching your own thing, but no one's ever going to really understand what we do. It's all in our crazy artist heads. But yeah, so that's so interesting about the fabrics that you said. So what fabrics are you allergic to?
Anything like hairly, anything contains like chemical and toxic hazardous, it's not good for me because I have like when I braid in, I get like braiding allergy. So no goose, no duck down, no cashmere, no leather. So basically, you have to go like vegan.
That's so interesting. It's like you're almost made, you had to go sustainable, and then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, wait, this is quite cool. And it's kind of interesting how sometimes like difficult circumstances make you have to find a solution, and then you do, and you're like, wow, this is so much more innovative than if I hadn't had those restraints. And it's kind of like what happened with Helsinki Fashion Week, I guess. Like originally it was supposed to be a physical event where we'd all be in Finland right now having a traditional fashion show with models on a catwalk. And because of COVID and everything that's happening, there's had to be so much more innovation to make this happen. So I think that's very interesting. I actually didn't even know that about you until this call. So it's very cool. Yeah. One second. Do we have any questions yet or no?
No, I don't see anything.
All right. Well, then it's still us.
Yeah.
What do you say are the
I
three?
was, yeah, I was like kind of,
For cutting. You go ahead.
okay, I was kind of curious, like, for me, running a business, like doing my own line, I don't spend as much as time that I wanted to for design in terms of running business. Like, what about you? How do you like percentage-wise?
Well, I feel like it's definitely. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like yeah, it's definitely not like art school, right? Where you're just completely limitless creativity, you can just do whatever you want because there's so many, constraints. And again, it's a one woman show. So you're right. I do spend a lot of time tracking shipping, like packets and like doing admin and invoices and things that are not so fun or not so creative. But um, I, I'm not too unhappy about it. I think a lot of people really find that they want to be art creative all the time, but I find that I think I actually need a break. It's like I don't want to paint fabric every day, all day. I like the fact that there's certain days that are dedicated to that, and then there's a lot of time where it's like it's a job at the end of the day. I think any job, there's things that you don't want to do that you have to do. So yeah, okay, there's paperwork and emails and whatnot, but I just feel like that's part of the gig, and at least we get to do the other stuff like half of the time. But you're right; it's not as much as you'd imagine. I think when you think you'll start a brand, you're like, oh my god, it's gonna be just me in my atelier all day, dreaming. But it's not exactly that. No.
Yeah. I'm getting that question a lot because a lot of young people who just graduating, dreaming about like launching their own brand and being artists all day, but try to tell that's not all about it, right?
No, it's not, but there's still a beauty at the end of the day that's like, I think as artists, we also have a small part of us that craves a little bit of validation and credit, all of us, I think, for what we're doing. And we want to be understood and we want our product to be valued. And when it's your own brand and at the end of the day, it has your name on it or your brand name on it, it's a satisfaction, I think. Well, you can tell me maybe since you actually have worked for other people, but when you pour all your energy and ideas into someone else's dream and someone else's product, and then at the end of the day, your name is nowhere around it. I don't know. I haven't had that experience, but what do you feel? Do you find it much more gratifying to actually see something and
Um,
it's yours and the world knows it's yours?
I think it's difficult because when you work for a company, their target, you know what to do. But for yours, it's like you're emotionally more involved with what you do. So limitation is a little different. Working for someone, working for myself. For me, I think working for a company was easier, definitely, because I know what to sell, I know what to do. But for myself, there's like too much emotions, involved when it comes down to work.
Okay, so basically at the end of the day, you feel like that's still worth, like the comfort of knowing what to do is still more important than the gratification of having it be your own product.
I think so.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's very interesting. I mean, maybe I'll feel that way in a year. Who knows? Just give it some time. What was I gonna say? And what about New York? Did you find what are the main differences between, like your working life in New York versus now in Korea, which is also quite honestly like on edge with fashion? I feel like Korea is doing really well. Are there any differences you've noticed in your fashion work environments, for example?
So yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm still need to get to know a lot of different factors in Korea because I never really worked for a Korean company, like just a short bit. But manufacturing and sampling and all like process a little different. So I'm still picking up. I'm still picking up. So it's like a start from the bottom again, all over again.
Muted. Okay. No, that's really interesting. I've never been to Korea actually. I really want to go. Everyone who's been actually tells me they find really great clothes and that design-wise, it's a very, very cool place to visit. Are you gonna stay there now, or no intentions of returning to New York, or
Not to New
no,
York, I guess.
it's over?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not to New York. Probably like Europe.
Yeah.
I go to Europe pretty often for my business trip, but I'll be back and forth, I guess. Yeah, I'd be back and forth.
No, that makes sense. I find Europe to be a nice balance between all of the different elements and design industries in different parts of the world because I mean New York can be quite draining. I don't know. Do you find that New York inspired you creatively or drained you? Because I guess you hear both sides often.
I think both. I think
Yeah.
both. Yeah, both. And I mean, 8 years was like, I think good enough to stay there,
It
including
was
school. I was
years.
there for 10 years. Yeah.
8 years was after Parsons.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah. Long
more
time.
than more than enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I only did 4 years. But I mean, I will say there's no place like New York in terms of creative networking and like the feeling, that urge every day to like go and do something. I find in Europe everything is so much more relaxed that sometimes you have to auto motivate yourself in a way that New York just does. I don't know.
I think it's so true that what you're talking about because I attended Parsons Paris 2 years and Parsons New York 2 years. Like has
Yeah.
a similar curriculum, but I felt much more relaxed when I was in Paris than New York. So
Exactly.
definitely.
I think our time is up. I believe we got a warning.
Yeah, no question. Someone
No
just
question.
interesting talk. That's all.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening in. And thanks, Nayeh. It was really fun to know more about your work.
Yeah.
Bye, guys, and thanks,
Bye,
Helsinki Fashion.
guys.